A judge has dismissed altogether the $400 million defamation lawsuit filed by director Justin Baldoni against Hollywood power couple Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds.
Hold up, let me get this straight. Justin Baldoni filed a $400 million lawsuit against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times, and it got completely dismissed by a federal judge in less than 6 months? We need to talk about this because what just happened in Hollywood is absolutely wild. And frankly, I have some thoughts that nobody else seems to be saying out loud. Look, I've been following celebrity legal battles for years, and this isn't just another Hollywood feud. This is a masterclass in how quickly the tables can turn in the entertainment industry. And honestly, both sides made moves that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about this situation. The dismissal of Baldoni's lawsuit isn't just legal news. It's a seismic shift that exposes some uncomfortable truths about power, retaliation, and what really happens when accusations fly in Tinseltown. Here's what nobody's talking about. This case has all the hallmarks of the post-Weinstein era legal battles, but with a twist that makes it completely different from anything we've seen before. We're dealing with two celebrities who were supposed to be collaborative partners, not a traditional power dynamic situation. And the way this played out, it's either the biggest vindication story of the decade or the most expensive legal miscalculation in Hollywood history. Let's start with the obvious. It Ends With Us was supposed to be Justin Baldoni's big moment. This guy built his entire brand on being the sensitive, socially conscious filmmaker who tackles meaningful subjects. He's the dude who made 5 Feet Apart and positioned himself as Hollywood's poster boy for emotional storytelling. This project should have been his crowning achievement. But here's where it gets interesting. Blake Lively wasn't just the star. She was a producer with significant creative control. In my opinion, this is where the real tension started. You've got a director who's also starring in the film, working with a producer-actress who has serious clout in Hollywood and isn't afraid to use it. That's a powder keg waiting to explode, especially when you're dealing with subject matter as sensitive as domestic violence. What strikes me as particularly telling is how the production atmosphere allegedly deteriorated. According to court documents, there were specific incidents that crossed professional boundaries: improvised kissing scenes without consent, inappropriate comments about attractiveness, and behavior that supposedly made multiple cast and crew members uncomfortable. But here's my question. If this was really happening, why wasn't it addressed immediately? Why did it take months after filming wrapped for these allegations to surface publicly? I'm not saying the allegations aren't true. I'm saying the timing raises questions that nobody seems to want to address. Either the on-set environment was so toxic that people were afraid to speak up in real time, or there's more to this story than we're being told. Both possibilities are equally troubling for different reasons. This is where my senses really started tingling. The promotional campaign for It Ends With Us was a masterclass in passive-aggressive celebrity behavior. Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni were doing everything possible to avoid appearing together, conducting separate interviews, attending different events, and maintaining an icy distance that was impossible to ignore. Compare this to other films where co-stars had rumored conflicts. Even when actors genuinely dislike each other, they usually manage to fake it for the cameras during promotion. The fact that Lively and Baldoni couldn't even pretend to be professional colleagues suggests that whatever happened between them was serious enough to override basic career considerations. But here's what really caught my attention. Lively was consistently surrounded by supportive co-stars and industry friends during the promotional tour, while Baldoni increasingly found himself isolated. In Hollywood, isolation during a major film promotion is like blood in the water. It signals that something is seriously wrong and people are choosing sides. The optics were devastating for Baldoni even before any legal action was taken. When you can't get other cast members to appear with you at your own film's premiere, that's not just a professional disagreement. That's a complete breakdown of relationships that suggests something significant happened behind the scenes. December 20th, 2024, Blake Lively files her complaint with the California Civil Rights Department. This wasn't just an allegation. This was a carefully orchestrated legal strategy that immediately shifted the narrative and put Baldoni on the defensive. Here's what impressed me about Lively's approach. She didn't just allege harassment. She documented a pattern of retaliation that supposedly followed her attempts to address the behavior. The complaint detailed a meeting in January 2024 where she allegedly confronted the production about Baldoni's conduct and demanded specific changes before returning to work. But the real bombshell was the allegation that Baldoni had hired a crisis publicity firm to launch a coordinated social media campaign against her reputation. If true, this transforms the entire situation from workplace harassment to organized retaliation, and that's a much more serious legal matter. What strikes me as particularly strategic is how Lively framed her complaint. She wasn't just saying, "This happened to me." She was saying, "This happened to me, and when I tried to address it professionally, they attempted to destroy my career." That's a narrative that resonates powerfully in the post-Me Too era and positions her as both victim and survivor. And then Justin Baldoni did something that absolutely shocked me. He filed a $400 million defamation lawsuit against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times. This wasn't just a legal response. This was declaring total war on one of Hollywood's most powerful couples. Let me be clear about what this number represents. $400 million isn't just compensation. It's designed to be financially devastating. For context, that's more than most A-list actors make in their entire careers. This wasn't about getting justice. This was about sending a message that challenging Baldoni would result in complete financial destruction. The inclusion of Ryan Reynolds in the lawsuit was particularly ruthless. By targeting Lively's husband, Baldoni was essentially saying that the entire Reynolds-Lively power structure was complicit in what he claimed was a coordinated attack on his reputation. This is the kind of legal strategy that either vindicates you completely or destroys you utterly. There's no middle ground. But here's where I think Baldoni miscalculated. Filing such a massive lawsuit immediately after harassment allegations creates an optics problem that's almost impossible to overcome. It looks like retaliation, regardless of the merits of the case. In the current Hollywood climate, launching a $400 million legal attack on someone who's accused you of harassment is PR suicide. Both sides started releasing evidence to support their claims, and this is where things got really messy. Baldoni's team made the decision to release behind-the-scenes footage from the film, claiming it would prove the harassment allegations were false and that all interactions were professional. This was a huge gamble that reveals just how desperate Baldoni's situation had become. Releasing private footage from a film set raises serious questions about consent and professional ethics, but more importantly, it suggests that Baldoni felt his only path to vindication was through public opinion rather than legal proceedings. Meanwhile, Lively's team was building their case with testimonies from other cast and crew members who allegedly witnessed inappropriate behavior. The contrast is telling, one side releasing unauthorized footage, the other gathering witness statements through proper legal channels. What this evidence war really revealed is how both sides viewed the battle. Baldoni was fighting for public vindication, while Lively was building a legal case. Those are two very different strategies that suggest two very different levels of confidence in the actual facts. To understand what happened here, we need to look at similar cases from the past decade. The Harvey Weinstein scandal created what's now called the Weinstein effect, a cascade of abuse and assault allegations against powerful figures who were previously thought to be immune from consequences. But here's what makes the Baldoni-Lively case different. Most of the major cases from the Me Too era involved clear power imbalances, powerful producers, directors, or executives targeting younger, less established performers. We saw this pattern with Brett Ratner, Kevin Spacey, James Toback, and Louis C.K., all established power players accused of targeting people with less industry influence. The Baldoni-Lively situation is more complex because both parties had significant power and influence. Lively is an A-list actress married to one of Hollywood's biggest stars, while Baldoni was the director and star of the film. This isn't a classic predator-victim dynamic. It's a conflict between industry equals, which makes the legal and public relations strategies completely different. Look at what happened with Ashley Judd's case against Weinstein. Her initial harassment charge was dismissed but later reversed by an appeals court. The difference here is that Baldoni's case was dismissed entirely, and the judge gave him a narrow window to potentially refile. That's not just a legal technicality, it's a signal about the strength of his claims. June 9, 2025, Judge Louis Lyman dismisses Justin Baldoni's entire $400 million lawsuit. Let me tell you why this decision shocked everyone who was following this case. Federal judges don't just throw out $400 million lawsuits unless there are serious problems with the claims being made. The dismissal wasn't partial or conditional, it was complete. That means the judge found that Baldoni's claims against Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the New York Times lacked sufficient legal merit to proceed. In layman's terms, the court basically said, this lawsuit shouldn't exist. Blake Lively's legal team didn't hold back in their response. They called the dismissal a total victory and a complete vindication, describing Baldoni's lawsuit as a sham that the court saw right through. But they didn't stop there. They announced plans to seek attorney's fees and costs, essentially trying to make Baldoni pay for what they characterized as a frivolous lawsuit. Lively's personal response was particularly revealing. She said she cried with relief and felt vindicated, but also acknowledged that while the suit against me was defeated, so many don't have the resources to fight back. This isn't just about her personal situation. She's positioning this as a broader statement about using massive lawsuits to intimidate accusers. Meanwhile, Baldoni's legal team offered no comment when reached by media. That silence speaks volumes about how devastating this dismissal was for their case and their client's reputation. Here's my honest take. The dismissal is absolutely a legal victory for Blake Lively, but the broader situation is more complicated than anyone wants to admit. From a legal standpoint, this is as close to total vindication as you can get. A federal judge looked at Baldoni's $400 $400 million claims and essentially said they were without merit. That's not just winning, that's dominating. The fact that Lively's team is now seeking attorney's fees suggests they view this as such a complete victory that they want Baldoni to pay for their legal costs. But let's be real about what this dismissal actually proves. It shows that Baldoni's defamation claims didn't meet legal standards, not necessarily that all of Lively's harassment allegations are true. Those are two different legal questions with different standards of proof. However, the optics are devastating for Baldoni. Filing a $400 million lawsuit and having it completely dismissed makes him look like someone who is either poorly advised by his lawyers or desperate enough to file a meritless lawsuit. Neither scenario is good for his reputation or career prospects. For Lively, this victory does more than vindicate her legal position. It validates her decision to speak out despite facing a massive financial threat. The dismissal essentially proves that her allegations about coordinated retaliation had merit, since the lawsuit itself becomes evidence of the kind of intimidation tactics she described. Honestly, Justin Baldoni's career is in serious trouble, and this dismissal might be the final nail in the coffin. Let me break down why his situation is so precarious. First, the lawsuit dismissal creates a narrative that he filed a frivolous $400 million claim against harassment accusers. In the current Hollywood climate, that's career poison. Studios and producers are already nervous about working with anyone who has harassment allegations swirling around them. Add a dismissed defamation lawsuit to the mix, and you become essentially untouchable. Second, Baldoni's brand was built on being the sensitive, socially conscious filmmaker who champions important causes. That brand is now completely shattered. Even if he could prove his innocence tomorrow, the public perception has shifted so dramatically that rebuilding would take years, if it's even possible. Third, the financial implications are staggering. If Lively's team succeeds in getting attorneys' fees awarded, Baldoni could be on the hook for hundreds of thousands, or even millions in legal costs. That's on top of his own legal expenses from filing and pursuing the lawsuit. But here's what really worries me about Baldoni's situation. The judge gave him until June 23rd to potentially amend and refile certain claims. This suggests there might be one last desperate legal maneuver coming, and frankly, I think that would be a mistake. Continuing to pursue legal action after such a comprehensive dismissal risks making him look even more unreasonable and vindictive. If I were advising Justin Baldoni right now, I'd tell him to cut his losses and focus on rebuilding, rather than continuing to fight. Here's what I think his realistic options look like. He could attempt to refile amended claims before the June 23rd deadline, but honestly, this seems like throwing good money after bad. The judge's dismissal was comprehensive enough that any refiling would face serious skepticism from the court. Baldoni could attempt a carefully orchestrated media campaign to rehabilitate his image, but this is incredibly risky. Any public statements could potentially provide ammunition for Lively's legal team or create new legal exposure. The best option for Baldoni is the retreat and rebuild route, even though it's the most painful. Step away from the public eye, let the legal matters settle, and focus on smaller projects that might gradually rebuild his reputation over several years. The problem is that none of these options are particularly appealing. The harassment allegations combined with the dismissed lawsuit have created a reputation crisis that's almost impossible to overcome in today's Hollywood environment. Let's be brutally honest about comeback prospects by looking at similar cases. We've seen careers derailed by scandal before, from Jonathan Majors, whose Hollywood ascent was met with sharp decline due to domestic dispute allegations, to R. Kelly, whose years-long checkered past finally caught up to him. The celebrities, who have successfully navigated major scandals, usually fall into specific categories: those who were completely exonerated by evidence, those who took full responsibility and demonstrated genuine change, or those who were powerful enough that the industry eventually overlooked their issues. Baldoni doesn't clearly fit any of these categories. He hasn't been exonerated. In fact, the lawsuit dismissal suggests the opposite. He hasn't taken responsibility for anything because he maintains his innocence, and he doesn't have the kind of institutional power that would make studios willing to overlook controversy for profit. Compare this to someone like Robert Downey Jr., who overcame serious legal and substance abuse issues to become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The difference is that Downey took full responsibility, demonstrated real change, and gradually rebuilt trust through smaller projects before returning to major roles. Baldoni's situation is more similar to those who never recovered from their scandals. The combination of harassment allegations and a dismissed defamation lawsuit creates a narrative that's very difficult to overcome in the current industry climate. This case is going to have lasting effects on how harassment allegations and legal retaliation are handled in Hollywood. The dismissal of Baldoni's lawsuit sends a clear message. Using massive defamation suits to intimidate accusers is not only morally questionable, it's legally risky. For other potential accusers, Lively's victory demonstrates that speaking out, even against powerful figures, can be successful if you have proper legal representation and evidence to support your claims. The fact that she faced a $400 million lawsuit and still prevailed completely will likely encourage others in similar situations. For those accused of harassment, this case shows that aggressive legal retaliation can backfire spectacularly. Baldoni's approach of filing a massive lawsuit not only failed legally, but it also made his reputation crisis significantly worse. The entertainment industry is going to be watching closely to see what happens next. If Lively's team succeeds in getting attorney's fees awarded, it will establish a precedent that could deter frivolous defamation lawsuits in harassment cases. Look, I've been covering Hollywood legal battles for years, and this case stands out for several reasons. The complete dismissal of a $400 million lawsuit is almost unprecedented, especially in a high-profile celebrity dispute. The fact that a federal judge found Baldoni's claims so lacking in merit that they couldn't even proceed to discovery is a devastating legal defeat. From Blake Lively's perspective, this is about as complete a victory as possible. She faced down a $400 million lawsuit, had it completely dismissed, and is now seeking attorney's fees. She's gone from accused manipulator to vindicated victim in the span of 6 months. For Justin Baldoni, this dismissal might be career-ending. The combination of harassment allegations and a failed defamation lawsuit creates a narrative that's almost impossible to overcome in today's Hollywood. His brand as a socially conscious filmmaker is completely destroyed, and his prospects for major projects are essentially zero. But here's what bothers me about this entire situation. We still don't have definitive answers about what actually happened on that film set. The lawsuit dismissal proves that Baldoni's legal claims were meritless, but it doesn't necessarily prove every detail of Lively's harassment allegations. Legal victory and factual truth aren't always the same thing. What we do know is that two careers have been fundamentally altered by this public battle. One has emerged stronger and more sympathetic, while the other has been essentially destroyed. In Hollywood, sometimes the legal outcome matters less than the court of public opinion, and in that court, Justin Baldoni has already lost everything. But here's where I need your input, because this case raises questions that go way beyond just these two celebrities. Are we looking at a new era where harassment accusers can successfully fight back against intimidation lawsuits? Or is this just a unique case involving two particularly powerful Hollywood figures? I want to know what you think about this entire situation. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you believe the lawsuit dismissal proves Blake Lively was telling the truth all along? Or do you think there's more to this story that we're not seeing? And here's the big question. Can Justin Baldoni ever come back from this? Or is his career truly over? And if you think I missed something important or got something wrong, call me out in the comments. Let's keep this conversation going, because in a story this complex, we need all the perspectives we can get. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest controversies, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications.